morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar powered by Hire Easy and Emplify Health. This is a special Healthcare Week webinar, and I'm so excited for you guys to join us. My name is Dan Harton, and I lead the customer marketing team here and community here at Hire Easy, and we're thrilled to have you dive into one of the most pressing challenges in talent acquisition today, and specifically kind of healthcare related. And that's how to deliver an outstanding candidate experience while managing the complexities of high volume healthcare hiring. Today, we have two phenomenal leaders from Emplify Health. Chet Doring, who is the Enterprise Director of Talent Acquisition, and Samantha Van Ansen. She's the Manager of Talent Acquisition at Emplify Health as well. We are going to dive into all aspects of healthcare recruiting, kind of what they're doing as an organization. And they're doing some really, really cool, awesome ideas that is really amplifying, the healthcare industry. So before I kick off, just wanted to introduce you two. The first question I have for you guys is, how would you describe the current state of healthcare hiring from your vantage point? And what's been the most pressing challenges for your teams kind of this year or just in the industry in general? You guys been kind of around the block, been in healthcare hiring for a long time, so you have the experience, the ebbs and flows of this. But how would you describe the current state of healthcare hiring right now?
Yeah, that's great. Great question, Dan. And I can take this one, and Sam and I are just going to kind of blend our thoughts together. For
Yes.
this one, Dan, just as an opener, we will always put the disclaimer that by all means, we're not perfect. We don't have it all figured out. We're certainly on our own continuous improvement journey, if you will. That being said, we're seeing some reassurances that, especially over the last year and even maybe 18 to 24 months, we're seeing that there's a larger volume of applicants for what we call our critical, difficult, visible positions. Not all, but we would say there's a good cross section where we're seeing certainly a rebounding, a resurgence, and improvements with the volume of applicants. And we know right now it's such a competitive climate. How do we ensure that we're pushing the best talent to our hiring leaders so they can keep up with their growing organizational needs? We also are seeing, just from a financial standpoint, we're having a little bit of a lessened utilization of our contingency agency staff. And while we have a great partnership with our master service provider, we also recognize, if we can hire within our own walls and make sure that we have that continuity of staffing done by our talent acquisition department, that obviously is great from an operational standpoint, but also just the fiscal stewardship pieces. So those are some of, I would just say, some kind of quick snapshot items. If we took a step back, so I'm a nurse by training, so I'm always interested, and Sam probably will agree with this. I tend to kind of like zoom out, right? If we zoom out, we also know that healthcare as a whole, we've been hearing more and more about burnout. So how do we ensure, while we right now, we're fortunate, we have an engaged, healthy workforce, we know regionally across the nation that burnout continues to be a factor. How do we ensure when we're talking with our hiring leaders, we're not just looking at their day-to-day staffing needs, but what's their, some of their factors with maybe, unproductive labor when we think about, needing to plan for that new initiative. So how do we get ahead of the curve? The second big rock from a large standpoint is just workforce shortages. While again, we're seeing some resurgences, we know, especially in the state of Wisconsin, right now we're hearing some very eye-opening statistics. When we think about, retirees, that silver tsunami, they're outpacing our youthful demographic within the state. So how do we continue to attract individuals that maybe primarily weren't thinking about healthcare within our state as well as outside? And then just the third thing that's so crucial for us in TA is keeping that idea on the comprehensive picture. So we'll talk a little bit about this later, but how do we ensure that when we're talking with prospective hires, they know what we do from a career development center standpoint, authentic storytelling, knowing that we really want to nurture their short-term as well as long-term career aspirations. So that's kind of my thoughts as far as maybe, state of healthcare and what we're looking at tackling.
Samantha, anything to add to that?
I think Chet hit on all the, definite focal points for us. And one thing I'll just add is in looking at the big picture and how, the silver tsunami, we are in it right now, and how we, are thinking long-term forecasting needs with the shortage looming, is we've really focused on what pipeline programs can we create or nurture or support. So, just always being creative and looking at new opportunities there. We've really put effort into growing our youth apprenticeship presence in the area with local high schools. We've looked at providing continuous learning opportunities for current employees providing them opportunities to further their education in those specifically hard to fill roles. So it's kind of a win-win for the employee and our system. So
Sure.
again, just always looking for new ways that we can combat that looming silver tsunami that we all hear so much about. So
When
just
you were
always being
talking, when you were talking, Chet, you mentioned high volume applications and kind of processing them. With kind of the high applications sometimes can be transactional, but how have you and your team worked to maintain more of a human-centered approach while still hitting, volume goals and making sure that those requisitions are being filled? How do you manage both of that and making sure that it's not just a transaction piece because these are livelihoods and people and how do you balance that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually going to kind of tip my hat here to Sam. I know she's got some great thoughts on this one, Dan. But just in a nutshell, Sam and her team and really our enterprise, really keeping that focus on people first values. But maybe Sam, as a jump off point, do you mind just kind of weaving
no,
in your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure.
absolutely. Yeah, to what Chad already alluded to, the focus is always going to be putting the person first. And although we have, yes, we track metrics and yes, we have goals, we're working with people and we need to make sure that every interaction that we're having, whether it's with a candidate, a leader, a student, to my youth apprenticeship note before, even with a high volume, we're always putting that person first and really living out our system values, which is belonging, respect, excellence, accountability, teamwork, and humility. We want every person we interact with to feel those values. So to successfully balance the person though with those metrics and it is high volume to your point, Dan, and we do need to get through the tasks at hand. We look to see what tools are out there that can help us be more efficient in those more transactional duties. So we can really focus on the person. So, AI is a big one, hot topic. What AI functions can we implement to maybe take out the more administrative tasks or transactional tasks from our workflows, texting capabilities, video interviewing platforms, automated email reminders, things like that. So we can really focus our time on the human-centered approach because that's always our goal first and foremost. So we don't ever want to take that away just because we have high volume tasks at hand. We're at first and foremost a healthcare system, so the person should always come first, and that's kind of our mindset.
So the big topic obviously is AI, and what are you guys hearing in the healthcare industry of how maybe you guys are utilizing it or other organizations utilizing it? What are some barriers? Like what's the talks in the town of AI within healthcare and recruiting? What's the buzz right now? Like, are people excited about it? Are people kind of hesitant and just want use cases? Where's this landscape of that?
Well, I'll answer it now, but if you watch this video tomorrow, it might be outdated by then because it's
For
changing
sure.
so fast. Um, I think right now there's so many opportunities with AI. A big one is how can it help with just pre-screening resumes and kind of filtering out to take again some of that transactional work off the recruiter's plates. But I'm starting to research a little bit more about what we're hearing agentic AI. So that's still, newer to me, but the capabilities and possibilities with agentic AI platforms sounds amazing. It's basically taking all the wonderful features AI offers without having to put a prompt in to get those results. So basically, it's kind of running in the background based on the work you're doing and says, hey, I see that maybe you forgot to send an update to this hiring leader last week for this position you're recruiting for. Here's a drafted message you could send to them. Kind of taking the prompt work out of it for the recruiter and being more of like an assistant, a virtual assistant. So that's really, really exciting. We are not using that yet, but again, just being aware of it, researching it, seeing is that something we could implement. So I think just always looking on the horizon. Back to my previous note about just taking that transactional work out so we can focus on the person. That's one kind of hot topic I'm hearing about right now.
Love it.
Yeah, and that's a great. I mean, Nailed it. I agree completely with all of it. I say it tongue in cheek, but that initial sentence that it's obviously, moving so quickly, what we say today honestly can change tomorrow. So we're humbled by that. I think with the great frame that Sam just put that in, my mind just jumps to as well. There's a lot of emergence with skills-based hiring. So we're hearing more and more, and we're really trying to position ourselves as a healthcare organization to be able to adapt and adopt those types of models and that thinking. To me, this is going to be a game changer when we think about, the large volume of talent that's out there. How do we look, beyond the traditional resumes and some of those just key features that sometimes can kind of pigeonhole us a bit? And I think AI is going to be a great tool to look at the scale of skill set and apply it to whatever applicable position we're looking for. So I think that's going to be huge. And then in addition to this is going to be more at the local level, but Emplify Health, really proud of our team. We actually leverage our own internal AI platform that's used for a variety of things, right? But that being said, we've used it in TA specifically to create more efficiencies for our talent acquisition group. In the sense, if you're doing posting, if you're doing some of those sourcing campaigns, how do you freshen it up? We know, right, in recruitment, it's hard to sometimes reshape that message. So we really try to use that tool to kind of have more of a multi-dimensional approach. So yeah, AI is here and it's ferociously changing the game.
You said something critical of like meeting the candidates where they want to be met, or different ways of, sometimes you can't change up that messaging so much. But I know, Samantha, you mentioned, hey, you're using text messaging, maybe videos. Like, how are you guys meeting candidates of how they want to be recruited in 2025 and beyond? Because I would say the strategies that happened 5 years ago probably are not working now, and the candidates, the expectations are different of how they want to be approached now. Walk me through kind of different situations or different scenarios or strategies that maybe your team has been doing.
Yeah, we're really intentional about that. It's a conscious effort. A couple of ways we make sure we are intentional about meeting candidates where they're at and how they want to be approached is every candidate that we end up hiring. That's one of our questions, kind of in their welcome to Amplify Health conversation with their recruiter, is how did you originally hear about us? What drew you to us? Was it a website? Was it an employee? Just really drilling down into how did you even, how did this come to be? We also ask it on our application, how did you hear about this opening? So we try to get to the kind of root of how they heard about us, but also providing ample opportunities and a lot of different methods to connect with people. Some people just want to email, some prefer that face-to-face connection. So we've implemented every about 6 months an in-person recruitment and networking event where it's open to the public. They can come and meet all of our recruitment staff. We have a good amount of leaders present from the system. We do facility tours and a panel discussion. It's a really great way to personally connect face-to-face with people. And actually, kind of surprised for me was the more younger generation seem to really appreciate that. There almost is a little shift there. With you might assume they want to email or text, but we get a lot of high school and college students at those in-person events. So I think it goes back to putting the human back in. And maybe we're always trying to be more efficient, but don't take the human focus out of it. We always want to. We have a motto in our system to lead with love. So just a human-centered approach and meeting people where they're at, but taking their feedback and what they do appreciate and how they want to connect with us, and implementing those. So it does, we've evolved over the years, so it could change in another few years, but right now we're seeing a lot of success with kind of that mix.
And you're just setting up for the next generation of healthcare leaders that want to be attracted to your guys' organization. Like you said, high schoolers, college students, and those are going to be the next leaders for the next healthcare, movement. And you're getting that first couple touch points with them and embracing them in your brand, in your community. So when the time does come of looking, they're ready and they know who comes to the top of the list. From a recruitment, branding, marketing, healthcare candidates have a lot of options. What strategies have helped you guys stand out as kind of an employer of choice in such a competitive talent market right now?
Yeah, Dan, that's a great. I mean, it's always kind of the $64,000 question. How do we keep sort
Yeah.
of reinventing ourselves and staying agile to the modern talent needs and what those preferences are? I wish there was like this classic complicated strategy because then we can maybe bottle it a little bit. What I would say, all joking aside, is I think just really having relatability with our messaging. That's such a key aspect where we want to be authentic. We want to make sure it's not just personalized, it's hyper personalized, if you will. So I think that's a key thing where Samantha, myself, Becky Murphy, who's our Gunderson Region TA manager, and others, we're constantly kind of vetting things and like, okay, how do we make this a little bit more impactful, right? So I think those core concepts drive a lot of what we do. And then we sprinkle in, some of those differentiators, right? So I'll use an example recently that we did for Emplify Health Nursing, where we created kind of our own little mini workforce value proposition. It was just organic, but really highlighting frontline nurses that are practicing in our Bellin region, in our Gunderson region via Emplify Health, and really giving them some time to talk about kind of their testimonials. Why do they practice here? But taking it a step further and really getting into kind of the nurse's mindset. What do they feel in the clinical environment? What is that cross lateral support that they're experiencing? And also for their career growth, how do we make sure we can map out what their next steps are if that's an aspiration for them? So I think that career development center piece is absolutely huge. And again, Sam already touched on it, but really staying in lockstep with what the youthful demographic is looking for in their career, right? I want to just give some huge credit to Samantha in our Amplify Health TA group. In the Bellin region specifically, we have close to 200 YA students that have taken on positions throughout our organization in the last almost 3 years. That's been very intentional, but it goes beyond just having that strategy. It's like, how do we meet them? How do we communicate with them? And also make it this very nurturing environment. So I think having those core principles, creating sort of the collateral, the materials to guide that with that hyper personalized message, and just making sure that you're doing that with multiple audiences across the way. Sam, other things though that I didn't touch on that you'd like to weave in?
You touched on all the points that I was running through. I just want to put a star next to that career development center aspect Chet mentioned. That's such a great opportunity for not a lot of companies offer a career development center for their employees, like within your own system. So just communicating that to students and to candidates, just the type of culture that we offer in our system, I think really sets us apart in that we want to nurture your growth and your goals, and we will help you get there. We will go with you on your journey. We're with you every step of the way. So I just wanted to put a star next to that note that mentioned.
Thanks.
I think, looking at the landscape, sometimes it's easy to say, oh, people will come just for a dollar more or 50 cents more or whatever it may be and just look for the money. But in reality, the big scope of things, candidates really want that nurture and development and career opportunities of where do I see myself in 5 years and give me a roadmap
Mhm.
to go get it versus just kind of dangling the carrot. All organizations kind of do that in some shape, way, form. But you guys are saying, hey, we invest in you so you can invest in your career, so you can impact the next generation. So I think that's super, super cool. And that's probably the biggest differentiator that you guys have over other healthcare systems because people see that. It's easier to say it, but it's harder to say, hey, we invested in this and we're going to do it. And people see that you actually are doing it. That's fantastic.
Mhm.
Dan, I may just piggyback on that last statement as well. And again, depending upon the audience, and I'm biased, I think it's applicable to almost everybody we interact with. And again, respectfully, there's a lot of healthcare systems that are talking about, yes, investing in staff, which of course we're doing through the career development center aspect, but also the community, right? And
Sure.
we really admire, I'll just say our executive leaders to start off with by really investing in our community. Just in the last, I'll say 24 months, right? We can highlight there's been the Children's and Adolescent Center, which is going to open up in our Green Bay area in August, right? We have our Surgical Specialty Center in Green Bay. We have 6 critical access hospitals in our Gunderson region. where we're investing in, renovations, refurbishments, things like that for our regional rural patients. And also in early development, but we're establishing an empath unit in the Gunderson region for our inpatient behavioral health patients. So I bring that up because, there's one thing to have on paper commitment to advocacy, and it's another thing to actually have those practical inputs along the way. So we really elevate that, knowing that, more innately when somebody's trying to get into healthcare, generally it's because of some of those principles, right? Of service, of compassion, and really giving back to our community. So I know that's kind of big picture, but in talent acquisition, again, that can be certainly a different differentiator.
For sure. What I'm seeing too, and maybe mark me if I'm wrong, but it's not even also about talent attraction or talent acquisition now. It's more talent retention and keeping your good people invested into the movement that you guys are creating. How do you guys set expectations and working with hiring managers or leadership of saying, hey, part of this is attracting the top talent, but then also keeping that top talent. Where do those conversations start, and where are you seeing that, in the bigger scheme of things right now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a close partnership between recruitment and our leaders. It has to be. We have to have open lines of communication, and it really is a true partnership. There are there's a need for the recruiters to have a full understanding of not only the vacancy that that leader is looking to fill, but what's the culture like in that team? What's your leadership style? What are the short-term and long-term goals of this position and your unit or your department? What are the projects you're working on? What's the size of the team? Really, the recruiter really needs that full picture of the team as a whole, in addition to, the kind of the nuts and bolts of the position. What's the hours? What's the wage? What's the, on-call rotation, what have you? Those are kind of the basics. It needs to be more than that. And you're only going to get that full picture with having a close relationship with the leaders and open communication. So to set us up for success, and the candidate, ultimately it's to set the candidate up for success. We implemented, we call them intake sessions, where the recruiter will meet one-on-one with the leaders to really grasp that the full picture concept of the team. That way, when we're talking to candidates, we can really speak to more than just, it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. We want to talk about deeper things than that to make sure it's truly a fit. And I mentioned already that there's more to it than the kind of basics of the role. So we actually really encourage the candidates that we're speaking with to interview us just as much as we are interviewing them, because it needs to be a fit all around. So it's always kind of more of an engaging conversation versus maybe a typical phone screen when we're talking to candidates. We want that longevity. We want the long term, to your point, Dan. So we want to make sure it's the right fit all around. And if this isn't the right fit, that's okay, because we're going to work to see. We're a big health system. We are going to find something, but we're only going to get you in the right role at the right time by having that bigger and deeper conversation. So just open communication. But lastly, it is also really vital that we're providing adequate training for our leaders so they know how to have those conversations as well. So we do quarterly trainings with new leaders or leaders who maybe just need a refresher. Recruitment leads those training sessions. So it's really vital that it's happening both when recruiters are interacting with candidates as well as the leaders. So that training's really vital as well.
I think the biggest takeaway you said is the training the leaders and the business hire managers that you're working with. Sometimes, you're doing a rec intake and then you finally get candidates to that screen with the hiring manager. And without having that training and conversations throughout the whole process, they might just say, okay, why do you want to work for us? Like, and kind of put that guard up of opting in versus, or opting out versus already opting in, and just say, okay, well, why do you want to work here? Why do you want to work here? Versus like, tell me about what's your story? And
Mm-hmm.
and if there's no training on that front end, sometimes harder for hiring managers and leaders to work with candidates that way. So I
Mm-hmm.
love that you're putting an emphasis at the start of the process and training up your leaders of how we want to hire and how we want to develop from the very
Mhm.
first conversations. Because these candidates are going to be, unfortunately, customers probably, coming to the healthcare system at some point. And
Mhm.
if they have a bad experience in that interview process, they're going to have a bad experience when they want care. And you're changing the script on that and making it an overall candidate experience because ultimately they're customers as well. And I love that.
Mhm.
Um, Walk me through kind of that mind shift with your recruiters. Obviously, recruiting has been going ups and downs over the last 18 months, ton of changes. Technology is kind of infiltrating our recruiting systems and everything like that. What is your team's experiencing right now, voicing the good, bad, or the ugly? What are they feeling right now at the state of kind of healthcare hiring?
Yeah. See, it's a good question, Dan. It's like a big picture question, right? I'll do my darndest here, but the timing is good. We actually just had our second in-person talent acquisition team meeting, and I'll just digress for a second. So we are a enterprise department here at Emplify Health for our TA, our recruitment practices, and we're officially a little over a year coming together. So I think we have a very unique lens, a unique perspective to share. And again, we met on Tuesday for our second in-person TA meeting, and I will just say, of course, I'm maybe a little bit biased, but I think our culture, the vibe is strong. And it's only getting stronger, right? No, I don't want to minimize. There's challenges, there's obstacles. What we really try to do to kind of safeguard and equip our recruiters, our TA specialists, is to make sure that we bring like really a holistic lens to the table. This has been a journey. We actually partnering with a group called Rogue Hire, which has
Yeah.
been in place for well over a year now. And I would say they've been very instrumental to making sure that we're looking at kind of what we call the three-legged stool of talent acquisition, really understanding what are our benchmarking capabilities, how do we get our arms around the data, the analytics, also thinking about the customer experience, whether that be with new hires, our leaders, et cetera, and then also just continuing to invest, probably most importantly, in their training, their development, whether that be with our pre-border work, with sourcing, for us as leaders as well. How do we stay contemporary with our leadership practices and TA? So as a whole, I think that's been a big game changer. I will say just statistically, good news is we are seeing that our time to fill, our time to start, and then some of our conversion percentages continuing to improve. Actually, this last quarter, we saw some really nice leaps. So those investments that we're making in the Rogue model, I think are starting to pay dividends. And also just from an engagement standpoint, they're feeling good. Now, I want to just couch that with the fact that it's crucially important that we continue to really think about their wellness and honestly just the balance of it all. It's such a transactional world we're in. So Sam and I, Becky, others within our leadership group are continually looking at, okay, what's the rec load? How do we make sure that, we give them the niche training as mentioned? How do we complement them with a sourcing model that's forward thinking? And then how do we make sure that we can keep those relationships strong, right? Some of those just kind of organic connections, they're a game changer, right? From a health wellness mindset standpoint. So that's kind of my, long-winded explanation of maybe the state of the team, but then really, giving them the tools and the autonomy to just drive it forward.
Awesome.
Mhm.
You hit on kind of the data, and every single year recruiting teams get more strategic, utilizing the data at their hands to be more business leaders and strategic partners to the hiring leaders that they're supporting. I know you mentioned, time to fill. What other are those main metrics, the time to fill metrics, are those always consistent? Do you see that evolving on, hey, we're going to really make a focus on this is what our targets or our goals are? Or is it do you think it's going to be time to fill for the next couple of years as well as it always been?
Sure.
I think it's I
I
don't
know it's
think
a
time
loaded question.
oh yeah, I think time to accept isn't going to go away. I think that's something
Yeah.
just always to keep your finger on. However, I do want to say metrics are just one kind of slice of the pie, if you will. And I never want to let metrics paint the whole picture because there's so much more to the pie. I'll stick with my pie analogy
Mhm.
than just the numbers. With that said, though, I mean, numbers don't lie either. And a lot of times they will point out potential blind spots in your process. So it is super important to be aware of your metrics at the same time, not letting them define your process. Um, you know, going back to the time to accept metric, although important and for the most part, do we want to have a low time to accept? Absolutely. But if it takes us maybe 100 days to find the best candidate for a position possible, I would rather that than filling it with the wrong fit on either side, whether it's candidates like this isn't for me or vice versa in 2 weeks. So just keeping that mindset of seeing the full picture and all the pieces that need to come together. I think that's super important. But yes, time to accept is definitely an important metric that we keep a pulse on. We actually review we have a weekly recruitment meeting that we review a lot of metrics as a team together, again, just to have the information. This is a really corny saying, and I said it in our meeting on Tuesday too, but I'll say it again. Knowledge is power, and just knowing your climate will evoke change and process improvements and efficiencies. So just having that awareness. So a couple of the metrics we review every week together as a team is the time to accept, how many positions or recs that were opened versus closed that week. Employee referrals, we really promote employee referrals, so just keeping a pulse on that. Offer declines and the reasons why. We just want to know our blind spots and have the awareness, but the data definitely helps us determine our priorities and areas of future work or focus or improvement. It's just we also keep that balance of seeing all the factors as a whole.
Love it. There's a question in the chat that said, what are your thoughts on entry level / no degree positions? We love to be at and host career fairs. However, we get bombarded with hundreds of applicants when we need only a few for current openings. How do you manage candidate messaging experiences in these scenarios?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I get it. That's a lot of people's foot in the door, and that's how they can start in your system. So that's typically the higher volume of candidates that you are receiving. It starts with that initial, or maybe not initial, but it starts with that in-depth conversation with one of our talent acquisition professionals. Even though it's an entry-level role, are you a fit for our system? That's what we're looking at. Maybe it's this role, maybe it's something else. We want to get to, are you a fit for this system? And if the answer is yes, we are going to do everything we can to find you the right fit. So we call it the talent pipeline list active. It's literally a list of candidates that maybe we didn't have a position at the time they applied or the time we met them, but they are a fit for this system. So we're going to do what we can to find a role. We keep them active on that pipeline. We continue engagement with them. And maybe it's a month or two or a year from now, we're going to do everything we can to find the right fit. So I know that's the highest volume. Not everyone is a fit for your system though. So I think that initial conversation is the most vital piece of that process of just first determining, are you a fit? And if so, I think it's our job to do everything we can to find them the right spot.
Love it. And the cool thing is, if you say, yes, you are a fit, but maybe at later end, you don't have a role now, you have a future role, that messaging, if you have that data around it, in that messaging to get them to respond when the time does come and you do have an open role, you can say, hey, a year ago, you went to this specific event. We remembered you. We would love to have a conversation about a role now. And the response rates would seem to be very, very high with that messaging because you remembered them and you put a name to the face. And the conversion rates, I would assume, would be very, very high with that. Even if
Yep.
they're working or not, if they found another job, because people want to be wanted. And that messaging goes a long way.
Yeah, it all goes back to that human connection that we talked about in the beginning. That's where you set yourself apart as an employer, is connecting on the human side of things. And Chet mentioned earlier our partnership with Rogue Hire. One piece of that is we send surveys to our customers, our hiring managers, our newly hired employees, and actually our non-hired. So that's a great example of exactly what you were just saying, Dan. Our survey results, even with our non-hired folks, is really great because it's that conversation. I'm really sorry this one did not work out, but I really enjoy getting to know you. You have great skills, and I'm going to do everything I can to stay connected and find you the right spot moving forward. So it's just maintaining that connection throughout their journey.
There's another question in the chat. I don't know who wants to take it, but it says, the generational differences, millennials, Gen Z, influence healthcare recruitment strategies? And I assume maybe from a strategy of outreach or just strategies in general to um, recruit all different ages, all different generations, and how has that evolved?
Yeah, Sam, I can just kind of take a quick run at this one. I would say, and we've been kind of mentioning this throughout, and this is a really good question. I think just, first and foremost, having the self-awareness to know that obviously we are recruiting across the spectrum when it comes from a demographic standpoint, their preferences, how they want to receive information. So I think one thing that we've really been working on over the last couple of years is having a variety of tools as far as how we engage. I think it's easy to default to just the technology component. But how do we make sure, even getting it further, right? Texting, right? That's one thing that might seem
Mhm.
simplistic, but I think I'll just say healthcare recruitment. I think we're maybe a little bit behind the eight ball, so we really try to accelerate how we communicate with individuals via our texting platform right now. I think the other thing, and Sam had mentioned this, we really try to be mindful of having those in-person events. And interesting enough, it seems like our youthful generation, they actually appreciate that, as well as maybe some of our more of our seasoned workers, right? They want to make sure that they have those in-person connections. I will talk as well about just even our relationships with our tech colleges, our universities. We really try to make sure, throughout our system that we have events where university tech college students are invited and they're able to see first and foremost what does it look like for a respiratory therapist to practice, or a physical therapist, an RN, a flight, EMS professional. So we really try to make sure that, again, they have a variety of ways to receive the information that is meaningful and it's sticky, right? So when they leave, it's not just noise, it's not just clutter, but it's like, hey, that's a little bit different. I want to engage. I want to connect back with recruitment and learn more about that. So, and doing that, again, across multiple ages and backgrounds.
And another thing, just to add on to what Chet shared, is from the leader perspective, part of that training that I mentioned earlier that we give to our leaders as far as just the recruitment and selection process, we do a portion of that training is on just generational awareness and potential differences. But even that, I feel like is such a fine balance because we certainly are not stereotyping generational differences either. It's everyone's an individual. So having the maybe awareness that there's such a large span of just different generations in the workforce right now and just being conscious of that, but getting to know them at an individual level. We call it an all about me survey that most of our leaders have their new employees or team members fill out right when they join a team. And that really drills down to their preferences. How do you like to be recognized? How do you like to spend your time off? Would you rather come in early? Or I'm sorry, would you rather come in late or leave early? Things like that, because yes, there's
The
generational
answer is
differences.
both.
Yeah, I'm going to add
I'm
that to the
kidding.
sheet. Check here for both. Um, yeah, I think the most important thing is just getting to know that individual, but having the awareness of just the wide range of generational workforce members we have right now.
What one thing Chet said at the beginning of it is sharing the company's story. And somebody told me this quote um 2 weeks ago. They said every story should be a recruiting story. And thinking about, you hear stories all of the time, working with hiring managers or your employees or whatever it may be. And as a recruiting function, if you hear something maybe more than twice, it has to be shared with everybody. So every story could be a recruiting story. And you mentioned, Chet, that you do a really good job of like sharing your employees' testimonials of why they work there. And it goes beyond a paycheck. It's the movement, it's helping people. What scenarios or what strategies are you guys doing to really elevate, your current workforce to tell and share the story to others that might want to join?
Yeah, that's a great question. Dan, I would say just a few quick thoughts. This has been something that I feel like we're pretty mature in as far as really understanding the power of storytelling. And
Mm-hmm.
for I'll say our corporate web pages, it's not uncommon to constantly see updated information as far as employee testimonials that are talking about the support, the motivation that they feel by being an Amplify Health employee. So that's one thing. I think just figuring out the right medium to share that information. The other thing that we've highlighted is again what makes us a little bit more unique. I'll use some of our pipeline programs as a jump off example. We have made a investment and we went sort of all in to say, hey, we want to bring you into our organization and we want to make sure that you can kind of quickly start as a trainee, if you will. And while you're doing that, we want to give you a launching pad to become a paramedic, to becoming a medical assistant, to becoming an RN if you're a youth apprentice, right? So how do we make sure that we share that and it lands, right? No matter where individuals are, we just feel like there's invaluable themes that no matter where you are, probably are very meaningful and really impactful. So again, thinking about how do we strategically plant that information, do in a really true and sincere way, but then give them a practical pathway. If I'm working in retail, not in healthcare, but I want to become, my goal is to become a paramedic, like that would be life changing. Hey, we got you. Here's the process to do that. And we want to make sure while you're on your educational path, you have a chance to work in our ER, to work in our ambulance and get a paycheck, build up those skill sets, and then also know you're taking that next step. So I think it's tapping into that power of storytelling on all those fronts.
Love
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, and another, I think, great opportunity that we've had with sharing our story actually comes from partners that we have in our community. A big one I think of is our CISA 7 and NUYA partners with the Youth Apprenticeship Program. They have been such a great partner for us in they're promoting youth apprenticeship for their program, but in doing so, they are sharing youth apprenticeship stories and experiences that youth apprenticeship student provided them on their social media and in their marketing materials. And those students are talking about their employment experience at Emplify Health. So that, I mean, it's hearing their, personal story from, not even us, like it's from one of our partners. So I think just having those really important, strong partnerships in your community is just even a greater way to share your story when it's not even coming from you. I feel like sometimes it even feels stronger reading it. So it's just another way we are able to share employee
Love,
voices.
love it. We have one more question. Looking ahead, what's one priority you think healthcare recruiting teams really must focus on to stay ahead of the curve for the next 12, 18 months?
Yeah, yeah. I
Another
will try
million
to
dollar
winnow it down to,
question.
yeah, I'll try to winnow it down to just, I'll say a couple. I won't cheat too much. I know the question was one. I think the first thing is, for us at Amplify Health, it's a good thing we're growing, right? Strategically and also operationally. So how do we stay ahead of those workforce projections? And Sam alluded to a lot of it as far as those intake sessions, having really great relationships with our hiring leaders, but understand, where's the hockey puck now? But more importantly, where's it the next 1 to 2 years? So we have a really high capability TA model. I would also say, again, keeping the people absolutely in the center. We want to be very sophisticated with our technology tools and the processes, but keeping that, idea that the people, whether the people that are doing the work or the ones that we're engaging with, they're at the center. And then the only other thing I would just say, again, going back to our staff, I'm biased. We have just an amazing talent acquisition team. How do we keep elevating them, keep investing in them? Because that's what they deserve and they just keep delivering. So that makes me tremendously proud. And in turn, you create that vibe, right? Vibe that people want to be there, even though it's tough and there's adversity along the way. They keep persevering, they keep striving and delivering. So those would be the three things. I know I cheated, I wouldn't be on one, but those are crucial for me over the next 12 to 18 months.
And you got a hockey quote in, you don't skate where the puck is, you skate where the puck's going to be, and
From a
that's
guy
why
that
you
can't
guys are
skate at all,
scoring.
Daniel, I love it, right? I can't skate, but yeah, got it.
The future of talent acquisition isn't coming. It's already here. See for yourself at HireEasy.com.